All right, now, so we're going to do the same thing, except this time we're going to change our reduced clause, our adjective clause into past participle phrase or our reduced clause. Okay, so let's take a look at the table here. Lab reports that are not handed. So do you see the verb are handed? Be verb plus past participle, that is our passive voice verb. So that are not handed in by Friday will not be accepted. Now, what do? I do the same thing as before. Cross out the that because it is subject. And since our past participle is handed, I simply cross out the be verb. And the punctuation rule remains the same. It is essential adjective clause turned into an essential participle phrase. So you do the same thing for past tense. The proposed law, which was opposed. So do you see how the verb is be verb plus past participle, right? So the first thing we do is cross out which because that is our subject. And then our past participle would be opposed. So I also cross out the be verb. And since originally it is a non-essential adjective clause with 2 commas, you keep the commas. It remains non-essential participle phrase. And if you remember, for non-essential participle phrase, we can also choose to change the position, move it to the beginning of the sentence before your antecedent. All right. So now let's look at our practice 2. Rewrite each sentence reducing the adjective clause to a participle phrase. Retain the commas because you want to keep the same punctuation rules. And let's look at the first one, which has been done for us. Cigarette companies, comma, so non-essential, which have been long criticized for their advertising tactics. So that is my adjective clause, right? So my independent clause is cigarette companies have been looking for new ways to sell their products. Now, what do? I look at my verb, have been criticized. So remember, a verb can be 2 or even 3 words. In this case, have been is my be verb in present perfect tense. Criticize is my past participle. So this is a passive voice verb. Now, I cross out my subject, which, I cross out my be verb, have been, and now I'm left with long criticize, our past participle. And as you can see in the example, you keep the same commas, right? And since this is non-essential, you can also choose to move it to the beginning of the sentence. Long criticized for their advertising tactics, comma, cigarette companies have been looking for new ways to sell their products. All right, number 2. One company plans to try out a new approach. I see my relative pronoun. That is aimed at young adults. So what is my verb? My verb is aimed. Be verb plus past participle. It is in present simple tense, right? So what do I do now? Well, I cross out my subject that. I cross out my be verb, leaving my past participle aimed. And leave it as it is because this is essential adjective clause turned into essential participle phrase. So you cannot move it around like non-essential. All right. And that is it for our past participle phrase.